Okay, Richard, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. How's
My
the
pleasure.
tour been going so far?
It's been really good. I think it's the most successful tour I've done. I've been going, I mean, even including the Lee and Herring ones actually. I've obviously been kind of going out most years on the road, but certainly the last sort of 6 or 7 of the last 8 or 9 years I've been out touring the country, and this is the first time it feels like it's got a little bit over the hump and things are selling out in advance. And so it's always been certain places I'd go do better than others. York isn't somewhere I've played very much, so it's kind of gratifying to have sold this, to do 2 shows and sold them both out. They're quite small shows, but it's still nice to have sold out so much in advance. So yeah, it just feels like there's just something's clicked over a little bit. I
think some of that's possibly to do with the podcast?
I think the podcast has definitely helped, and certainly there are people who come who say, I've rediscovered you or I've discovered you through the podcast. And so yeah, it's nice to have that weekly advert for it as well, but also I think people appreciate that's for free, and then they and if they enjoy it, they go, well, let's go and see them live. So that, and that it wasn't really part of the motivation of doing it, but we kind of thought that would be the way we got kind of paid off for it would be, in terms of people either buying stuff or remembering us or getting other jobs through it, which I think definitely works. But I think it is through just relentlessly pounding the country and going, the last 5 years especially, I've been doing a lot of stand-up gigs as well as my tour shows. Yeah. So I've been gigging 5 or 6 times a week, and some of them are my own shows and some of them are 20-minute slots, but I've been coming up to places, and so people are rediscovering, I think, a lot of people, either remembering the old stuff we used to do and then, getting new fans through from the newer stuff. So yeah, I think the blog, the podcast, stand-up, this show has had really good reviews, which I think helps, and really good word of mouth, and that kind of happened in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's got the state where, I'd seem to just about sell out in a kind of reasonable 185 seat room most of the time, but not entirely, So it's just been a slow build, which is it's gratifying to, and I think if anyone who's been following my blog for the last 6 years, you kind of see, my career had slightly dipped a little bit. I was still creating stuff that I was pleased with. But it's kind of a little journey of working very hard and seeing that starting to pay off. So people who've invested in the blog seem to be almost more touched by it than I am, that I'm kind of suddenly happy about my gigs. Yeah.
Do you remember when you first decided you wanted to become a comedian, and who were your biggest kind of influences as a child?
I just was always interested in comedy, and I just like funny people. So my granddad was probably the first, my mum's dad was probably the first person who I really loved because he made me laugh so much and was trying to be funny all the time, even as a tiny kid. And I knew, I was always just interested in jokes. I talk about it in the show, but I was trying to be funny right from the beginning and doing little puppet shows and writing. The minute I could write, I was writing stories. So I just think there's some things that are kind of innate in you, and that's what you want to do. And I knew I wanted to be funny, and I knew I wanted to write really if I could. But when I grew up, it wasn't, and I was growing up in the countryside, it wasn't like really an avenue that you felt was a proper career. So I was always going to go to university anyway because I was quite academic. But it was you were encouraged to make sure that you had something to back up if that was the way you wanted to go. But to actually become a comedian seemed a bit of a pipe dream in Cheddar in 1983, and probably not until I got to university and started doing quite well. I think once I got to university and got into the Oxford Review, and I was quite surprised about, did well in Oxford, university in the comedy. So I thought that I'd get there and everyone would be hilariously funny and miles better than me. So early on I liked. There's people like generally Rod Hull. We genuinely, both me and Stu, really liked him as kids. There were things that anyone who was funny who we then worked with obviously a little bit in some of our TV work. But when I kind of got, Monty Python records were probably the epiphany. I was too young to see the series when it was on, and things were very rarely repeated then. And so I kind of got it all off the records, the long play, the old-fashioned discs. And then I got into Not Enough Got News, and then I think the young ones was really, Rick Mayall did a character called Kevin Turvey I was quite obsessed with. I think a lot of people of my generation either did Kevin Turvey or Rick from the young ones, throughout their late adolescence, was just spending your whole time saying things in Rick Mayall's voice. So those are the people who kind of influenced me, but then, a lot of that's about, Monty Python is so, and, before that, Peter Cook really basically, I kind of got into Peter Cook through Monty Python and Derek and Clive and stuff like that, which I was just commenting on the other day on my blog, because I used to listen to that when I was 13 or 14, and it's fairly filthy, disgraceful stuff, but because I had a few youngsters in the audience the other day in one of my shows, and this is quite a full-on show in places. But I think you can actually take it, and you're more almost. I think a lot of teenagers have got excellent taste, and funnily enough, a lot of teenagers, a lot of my audience now, I think, are people who used to watch me on TV 10 years ago when they were 12, because they could watch it because it was on a Sunday lunchtime, and and at the time they wouldn't have come and see us because they were too young, but now they, so it kind of pays off down the line a little bit that.
Yeah.
That I was grooming these 12-year-olds to be my fans, and so yeah, so it was, those, I just loved comedy, and I was interested in jokes, and I can remember jokes that I didn't get at the time when I was 3 or 4. They still stuck in my mind. I remembered them until I was then able to make sense of them later on. So it was just making people laugh and laughing and doing jokes, and and then moving on to Monty Python, who was more than jokes, was about creating worlds. The influence was about being original, I guess.